Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the SempreMilan bonus podcast on Substack. After a very bad week in Serie A, Milan seem to have missed out on the top four. We are going to look into what the impact is of no Champions League football next season at all levels of the club, economically, and of course on the playing side. Do you know what, mate? It's a Friday.
I knew that this time.
Good. It's sunny outside, really sunny here. It's starting to warm up a little bit.
Yeah.
We're heading towards, it's March tomorrow, isn't it? So spring is approaching, shall we say. And yet I have never felt quite so deflated, shall we say, on a Friday this year, shall we say.
Talk about the weather a bit more. I
Yeah.
went for a walk yesterday by the water. It was nice. It was warm out, and yeah, I enjoyed myself. Took a nice little stroll. Did hear a homeless man yell, so I turned around. But yeah, it was a good walk up until then.
Yeah. Was the homeless man okay, or?
I didn't check.
No.
I was around a corner, and I saw him walk that way, and then I heard him yell immediately, and I said, "Well, I guess I went as far as I need to go on the trail." So turned around. It was on the waterfront area, and there were a bunch of townhomes on the side, and there was like a little step ladder, or not step ladder, but staircase, a little mini one going into their neighborhood, and I could have kept going around the buildings where he was, and he started yelling. I was like, "Well, steps right there. I'll just go up that." So,
I didn't know Antonio Cassano lived near you. So we have got a bit of a problem here. The game in hand's gone. The top four trainers left without us. I think it's fair to say. We could have probably done this a few weeks ago, given how bad the results have been across both managers. The points per game pace has not been anywhere near good enough. Conceição lost his fifth game in less than 2 months last night against Bologna, 2-1. We knew, Torino was a bad one. That was a missed opportunity. But then we've got 2 6-pointers coming up, or we did, because now the Lazio game really doesn't matter all that much. And yeah, that's out the window. We lost, second half collapse. We're going to obviously recap that game in full on the main pod, but we just got to talk about the after effects here. We're 8 points behind Juve in fourth. It looks like Serie A is only going to have 4 teams, but even if it goes to 5, then we're 6 points off fifth. And I actually don't see us beating Lazio because the goal's so much closer for them. They'll want it more than us on Sunday, and I don't see us winning that game. And, it's all over by the shouting. The Coppa Italia is the only thing we've got left to fight for. It's a disgrace of a season. We're at the end of February and we feel like this. And that's with a managerial change and 5 signings in the winter window. So it's going to go down, I think I said on Twitter, as a stain on our history this season. I really do think that, because you can have targets and fall just short of them. Like you look back and we finished second on some occasions in recent seasons, even though it felt like we were never in it. You still got a second place finish and you got Champions League football to rely on. This is just back to like 2015 stuff. It's really bad. So no Champions League football. What's the first thing to talk about? Shall we talk about? Go on.
Sorry, you mentioned something that actually just kind of put it into perspective. A little different view is our second place finish last season. We were 20 points behind first. We're only 16 points behind first right now, but we're in eighth.
Yeah.
Interesting how that happens.
Fair point. Yeah. Fair point. There is no, dare I say, it's sort of like the Premier League in the sense that there is no real runaway winner this time that's not dropping any points. That pace from Inter, as much as it pains me to say, it was ridiculous last season. And of course, they accelerated when they realised that there was a scenario where they could win it against us. But now they're going neck and neck. That'll be the only thing to really watch for, and I think we know how it ends. I can see Inter holding their nerve and Napoli flapping it. I think Napoli failed to win 4 of the last 5 league games or something. It's
sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's no bueno. This season is shaping up to be probably the worst of my time watching football. Liverpool are going to win the league. Leeds are going to get promoted back to the Premier League top. Huddersfield were fighting for automatic promotion at one point, but are now going to drop out of the playoffs, as it looks like. Our other local rivals, Bradford, are going to get promoted into our league, and we haven't played them for 15 years. Inter are going to win the Scudetto and potentially go far in the Champions League. Not good, man. It's not an ideal.
Yeah, this has
Not an
been one of the
ideal.
most testing seasons as a fan for me as well. Exclusively Milan, because I don't really care about any of the other ones. But yeah, I mean, it's even though point wise this is not the furthest from the top we've finished in recent memory. Being eighth, whether you're 5 points off top or 20 points off top, is a lot worse than being second. And that hurts. I do think it'll be nice having one competition next season, knowing that we played a game every 3 to 5 days since November 20th, which is an insane pace that we obviously can't keep up with. And it's impacting our players, injuries, performance, everything's dropped. Mentality of our coach. I mean, the guy we brought in to be a mental monster has totally cracked and collapsed under the.
He's mental.
He's quite literally crying in post-match interviews, talking about how people are saying mean things in the press, and it's like, bro, this is Italy.
He's buckled under the pressure, hasn't he? He really has. He was sheltered at Porto, definitely, because he's a club icon, and it can happen. Like, Amarim's struggling at United, and I shouted for him in the summer.
So did I.
I would have taken Conceição, and I still think would have done a bit better with time to build. You've got to bear that in mind. But you brought him to do a job, and he claims to have turned down 10 plus other jobs that were higher paying and stuff because he wanted this, and now he seems to not want it anymore. He said, if I'm the problem, I'll pack my suitcases and I won't take another Euro. And it's like, that's what you want to hear from you.
Funny, because what he's saying is he's not the problem, and that's why he's still here. He's like, if I was the problem, I would have left. But he's saying, I'm not the problem, so I'm still here.
I think he's good in the management a bit, though. Sort of like, sack me if you don't like me. I also they cancelled
today. Tassotti is rumored to be a caretaker, so that's awful. I'd rather keep Conceição for the summer or for the rest.
Although, with Tassotti and Cesare Maldini as joint caretaker managers in 2001, we beat Inter 6-0.
I mean,
I'm just saying.
We haven't lost Inter yet this season, so
we've got to play them twice. I'm just saying.
Isn't it interesting how this is, we both agree, one of the worst seasons we've seen in the last 10 years or so, maybe 15 years, and we haven't lost to Inter or Juventus? No, we did lose to Juve once, right?
We lost to Juve,
yeah. But we won a trophy. There's potential that we win a second trophy this season, do a domestic double. It's the worst season we've had in years. It's kind of
domestic double, but without the big one, the league.
Exactly.
If we did that 2 trophies and we missed out on top 4, are you sort of like, we got a nice patch on our shirt for next season? Doesn't look too bad, are you?
So I have a couple of friends who are diehard Chelsea fans, and I've said that to them while watching our, banter era and what we had. Obviously, we turned it around as soon as their season started going to shit, but they still won a trophy every year, even when it was bad for them. And I was like, guys, you realize your hard times are still better than 90% of clubs in the world?
Oh, yeah.
And
like Man United are an absolute circus, and they won the FA Cup final against City last season. So, like, that would be enough for me for a long time,
Yeah.
Amazing.
What
the Chelsea thing. I was listening to an interesting podcast about Chelsea and how, like, they're so used to the Abramovich era of, if you go a season without winning what they want, fighting for the league and going far in Europe, gone. World-class manager they might be, but they're getting sacked. Di Matteo won the Champions League with them and got sacked a few months later. It's just it's a ruthless culture, but it brings them trophies. You can't argue with that. Anyway, trophyless club, us. We're not. We have one more.
Not this year.
I wonder what the records are for, like, trophy-winning managers at Milan who last the least amount of games.
It's got to be Conceição.
He's going to be. I know
he's still here, but it's going to be him.
Do you know he's been in charge for less than 2 months?
Yes.
It feels like it's been a lifetime, man. I think it's all very draining.
Every 2 to 5 days is a game. That's why the moment we sacked Fonseca, I said on this podcast, whoever comes in, obviously I said Conceição at the time because we knew it immediately, said he is set up for failure. There is not enough time to write 6 months of wrongdoing while implementing your system, while in the beginning of a transfer window, without knowing the players. And we could say, oh, maybe he was watching the whole season. No, that's not how it works. Like, he wasn't doing that.
They say they do, but
They're not. They
I've
don't know
watched
where they're
so many
going
Milan
6
games.
months early. If they knew, they would be there already. So
Mm.
I knew he was set up for failure, and that's why I really want him to stay next season. I know that sounds counterintuitive with the way shit's going, but I don't think we're gonna get there. I think it's
I mean, we put a break clause in his contract exactly
reason.
for this eventuality. Like, we're seeing it all play out.
Yeah.
Like, the reason why we put it in there.
I do think
Okay.
everything we did in the January window was correct. Even Felix, to an extent. I know he sucks and I don't like him, but I understand why we went for that move as well. I don't think we did anything crazy outside of maybe selling Benacer, but that was his request. Yeah.
I mean, us signing João Felix was us saying to Conceição, here's your guy, now do your thing.
Exactly.
Like, we'll back you. They've brought in players that I think any manager would like to use. I think, Kyle Walker's a name. We need him back, by the way, because Jimenez, terrible at right back last night. You just can't play full back at this level while he's this size, unfortunately.
Say football.
That also. No, he's all right. It's just not happening there, is it? Bondo, one for the future. Jimenez, I think any manager coming to Syria would like to have him. Those are functional signings, but João Felix is the guy who's like, all right, if you want him, we'll get it done, but we expect to see an upturn. This is us backing you. Now you repay it. And I mean, cancelled the press conference the day before the Bologna game, probably because they wanted to protect him from the media after two really bad results against Feyenoord and Torino. What's the end product? He gets in front of the cameras and threatens to quit twice in back-to-back interviews after the game. It's not happening. I don't want to do the personnel changes just yet. I just want to talk about the money, the economic impact of us missing out on the Champions League. There's an article on our site where you can find the full breakdown. I'm not going to go through it all. Potential loss of over 50 mil. There's the headline. Champions League and Europa League prize money compared. We're not going to be in the Europa League at this rate. So this, but worse. Without going into all the individual numbers, Champions League this season, you can estimate our revenues to be around about 85 million euros. 60 million prize money, plus 25 mil in ticket sales, box office, all that, hospitality, that kind of thing. In the Europa League, if we have a run to the same stage, so therefore the playoff round, which would be, the fairest comparison, it would be around 30 mil. So that is a 55 million drop-off. Of course, you get a bit more if you go further. You get less if you... Conference League, again, way down. So you're looking at... We're missing out on a minimum of 55 million, maybe 50 million. That's a big hole in the accounts. And we have seen with this ownership that I don't think they're willing to foot the bill.
No, that means we sell Teo and we're still at -5.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get to. I think Elliot, for example, injected a lot of capital to cover the losses. I don't think Redbird will do that. I think Redbird are striving to create a profit organically, and they've done that. In the last accounts, we generated a small profit, and that's brilliant because from a player trading point of view, it didn't feel like we had a really scrimp and save Mercato. It was like, okay, we can work with this. But I think that without that 50 million, it's just going to be added onto the bill. I think there'll be less to spend in the summer. We will have money come in from, options to buy being turned permanent. We will make some sales anyway, like probably Chukwueze is going to go, maybe RLC, maybe Tomori. So we'll bring in money that way. But I think that 50 mil, it's not going to be like, forget about it. We're going to spend the same amount. Don't worry about the 50 mil. And then, I also look at what happened in the winter window with Jimenez and think that investment was planned for the summer, and we brought it forward, like trying to speculate to accumulate. Took a bit of a gamble there. It's not going to pay off in the sense that we're not going to be in the top. We're not going to be in the Champions League next season, so you can maybe add that on and say we're 85 mil down ahead of the summer window. I think what we will see is probably a return to the early Maldini days in terms of spending levels, where we're kind of having to, or maybe even the post-Scudetto window, where you have to make do with like a 50 mil net spend. And it's quite hard to engineer a revolution like that.
Especially in 2025, where average players are going for 50 mil.
Yeah, it's bleak, really. And that's... I wouldn't even say that's like the glass half empty look at it. I think that's just a realistic look at it. But if you want to be positive, maybe there's something to come from the struggle, and it will be a big eye opener to Cardinale and the management. Like, okay, we've neglected things on the playing side for a bit too long, and we need to pump a bit more cash in to right the course. I don't think it's going to happen that way. That's my gut feeling. But maybe they will say, this is unacceptable. Don't care. We need to protect our asset. We need to spend in order to raise the level and get back there. So, yeah. Right. Let's start management, because I think this is important. Zlatan, Furlani, Moncada. That's it, innit? Who cares who goes? We sacked Otavio already, haven't we?
Yeah. For me, they all gotta go. Honestly, I think I was one of the biggest supporters of the transition, and I'm not gonna say I was proven wrong because I wasn't saying these were the best guys available. I was saying that it made sense why Maldini was gone. I stand by that. But just
Yeah.
like I thought Maldini, his time was up, I think these clowns, their time's up too. I think there's a good argument that they did worse with a lot more. Um, all of them got to go for me. You know, you got to
Yeah.
get someone with real experience. Moncada was never in this position. Um, if they move him back to like chief scout or whatever he was before, where he made a name, where he was renowned, where he was a good at his job, I think that's fine. I don't think it's a downgrade for him. I think it's right back to where he excels, where he should be. And as long as they could frame it like this is not a punishment, we're just going a different direction, go back to what you're good at, that's fine. Zlatan, I don't look, he's a Redbird employee, so he's not a Milan guy. But if you're a Redbird employee, then stay in New York. I don't need him at Milanello. I don't know what he's doing other than making things worse. It sounds like he's just the tiebreaker vote on a lot of stuff, and from my understanding, he keeps picking the wrong choice. There's only so many coin flips you could lose before people are fed up, you know? And I don't know who's available, who you would go for. It's not my job to figure that out, but Furlani, get rid of him too. I'm not for bringing back Maldini, but I think that would be a good way to um, save some face with the fans, buy a bit more time. I don't know if it'll help us, but I know a very loud section of the fan base would quiet down if he said, "Okay, I hear you. We're giving you
Yeah.
back your guy."
It's the obvious fire extinguisher at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's not going to happen. No
No, of
chance.
course not.
Not while this ownership. You have to go one further up before you start talking about that, and that's an ownership change. And it's not going to happen. Not a chance. It's a really difficult one because I suppose you throw Scaroni in there as well, actually, as president. But I think we'd all happily bin him off.
Yeah, he's not even real to me. He doesn't exist.
Yeah,
So.
I don't know. It's difficult because, like, you can't just go and look at a list of vacant presidents, or you can't look at a list of out of work CEOs that you might bring in to replace these guys. But with sporting director, it's easy. What I would say is, I kind of like the structure that Inter have, whereby Marotta is like the CEO president on the playing side, and they've got a corporate CEO called Antonello, and he does all of the negotiating on that side. I don't hate that, actually, because I think Furlani is probably an asset in the sense that his background is all on that side. It's finance. So if you keep him doing that, because he's raised
that's
our
what he
revenue.
did under Elliott. He was an Elliott guy.
Yeah, and you can't argue with our upturn financially and our record revenues, and keep him on that side and let him do that. He ain't a football guy. He hasn't got the experience in that particular field.
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden you've got a really interesting position to pitch to somebody of being like a technical director, but with power. Here's the keys, you lead the rebuild. It's just who you go and get. I thought it's a shame that Berta has the agreement with an unnamed foreign club that's meant to be Arsenal, apparently, because that's a shame, because I think he'd have jumped at it. He's from Brescia. He's from up the road. He might even be a Milan fan for all we know. But we got there too late.
Most people we are. Yeah.
Yeah. Or he could be a Brescia fan. And then, you could, as I say, you can pitch this all-encompassing role and be like, we need you to lead us out of this, kind of like him and Simeone did at Atletico Madrid. I don't know
think
who
that's
that
the other
can be
thing
now.
that
Paratisi is probably used to that kind of a role, but I was looking into his recruitment record
Yeah.
because of
it
the
actually isn't that
link.
great.